Hello, and welcome to the Physical Therapy Owners Club podcast. I'm the host, Nathan Shields, and today I've got James Savas. He is currently the Deputy CEO at Hands On Diagnostics, and that's how I got to know him. But James is an expert in many things related to HR, but specifically, he's a senior HR professional with a specialty in business development. He's also a certified educator and executive coach. So he brings a lot to the table from past experience and PT specific experience, and not just PT. He's worked in other healthcare settings as well. So I'm excited to bring him on so we can talk about HR related issues. And today, well, I'm depending on our discussion, how these things go, we're looking at maybe making this a two-part episode where we talk about a lot of things related to HR, and I want to do that because James has a ton of experience. But first of all, James, thanks for coming on, man.
Cool, man. Good to be here, Nathan. Thanks for your time.
Yeah. Well, share with everybody a little bit, James. You've got a ton of letters behind your name. You've got a ton of great experience. Give us the breakdown. What's some of your professional experience that you have in regards to PT in the healthcare settings and what you've done and brought to the table for PT owners in the past?
Sure, of course, man. So been in the game about 20 years, and a little more than 20 years on some smaller projects. But like you said, I worked for dentists, chiros a little bit, but mainly the PT sector. I mean, most of my time happens to be with private practice owners and orthopedic clinics generally, most of them. And what I'll do is, it depends on what discussion I have. I definitely have to work with an individual that has really good intentions to do something with their game, that they want to expand. Either they're too much in the game to expand. They don't have time to think about the administrative side or that HR side or whatever you want to call it. Or they just want to get out of the game and just own and let that machine roll, right?
Yeah.
So I usually am dealing with guys in my track here on those two different sides. So I've worked with guys up and down the Rockies, New York, Southern Florida, Central Florida, a little bit in Texas, and again, mainly PT side. And I'll go in as an HR professional, as a recruiter, depending on the gig again. Business development's a big part of what I do, because a lot of the owners out there, hopefully I can be of service to you guys, of course, is a lot of them, like I said, they don't have that guy or that ear or that outlet for, can I put something on your shoulders? It's all on my shoulders. Can someone else share the burden, please?
Yeah, exactly.
So here you go. So I generally had been that guy where they go, okay, dump, and then I'll be the figure out, organize brain that they can do, but they don't have time for generally. Right?
Sure.
Or they don't want to do it. Some of them, in some cases. So that's that's a nutshell. But I've been, I've seen the game, the private practice game overseas in Ireland, all over the parts of the U.S. Currently, I'm dealing with a national company who has, a whole bunch of owners all over, and I think 26, 27 states. So, I like what I've done. I've worked in rural Montana, and I've worked in the Astoria, Queens. So, I've seen both sides of the game pretty much. So I can talk to an Alaskan up there, like yourself, who might have some troubles, and a guy in Miami who's working, so there's a nutshell for you. If that helps.
Yeah. Well, that's cool because, a lot of owners that I'm supposing are listening, they're like, man, I wish I had a guy I wish I could afford a guy like you to come in, because I know in my situation, people would ask me all the time, man, how's the business going? Really, as I was in the thick of it, how's the business going? How are things coming along? And almost to a T for about 10 years, I was like, well, I love treating the patients and I really enjoy that, but I can't stand the HR stuff, having to deal with the employees, the person who gives me no notice and says I'm out of here today or doesn't show up, or someone who does give me notice, but they happen to be a PT and I know it's going to be 2 or 3 months before I find another PT, even though this PT only gave me 2 weeks notice, It's just like, just stab me in the heart. Those things kill me, and having those, holding people accountable, all those things were so hard. And so hopefully we can get into some of that to give some owners some ideas on what they can do to improve that HR side by spending just a little bit of time in there. Right. And so as you worked across the country, we want to talk a little bit about recruiting, hiring, and onboarding. And as we hit those three things, or before we hit those three things, what are some things that you came across in your experiences with PT clinics in particular that seem to be an ongoing trend? Like you'd come across and say, oh, this is how you guys think, or, oh, this is how you guys work. there's some kind of trend going on here that you need to correct typically when you walk in a PT practice.
Oh, sure. That's
anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I alluded to it a little bit before, but what I'll see is that normally the individual, the owner, has a bunch of ideas, right? He's got a bunch of ideas for expansion, things he'd like to do, or people he'd like to fire, people he'd like to bring on, and and he's got time generally, or he or she, sorry, got time for not much evaluation of that data. They have the ideas, like they're in idea stage, and they're kind of all locked in this idea stage. So, so some of the fixed ideas, if you will, are that they can't afford an employee to do that, or that they are. This is often a debate I get for them, is they need to hire, they can't afford to hire because they're concerned then about the other side. They bring the guy on, the girl on, they're no good. They have to let them go. They wasted all this time now training them, and darn it. And then, so it's for me, again, the HR side of things anyway, it is that the attention on those things is not there. And their ideas of when they should build up their staffing, how often they should, when to let go of the dead weight. Because, I mean, you have both sides. Is you have to spot, you have to be, really, it's a manager's hat. It's a manager's function that they don't always do. That they have, they're busy in treatment, or they're busy in other things. That there's that executive manager's role where they should be observing the employee, going, "Well, that's no good. Why is she still here? Why is he still here?"
Okay.
So it's both sides. It's keeping staff that should be there and dumping the dead weight, and no time to evaluate that. And then it's on the front end. It's, when do I need staff? Can I afford staff? How do I get them productive? Because I'll bring them in and I'll let them go, him or her go, and then I'm busy. Are they getting it done? I hope they're getting it done. I think they're getting it done.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I think I know exactly what you're talking about, in that you've got an idea and you say the solution is to hire blank. Maybe it's to get rid of blank, but you haven't taken the time to work through the process of how to bring that person on and onboard them successfully. So I think we miss the steps I think that's what you're talking about. We're missing steps in between. We've got this idea. We think we see the solution, but there's a lot of steps in between that make that solution successful. We just jump from idea to solution, and then go and work on our patients 40 hours a week without lifting our head up to observe, well, how are they doing? Or did they get any training whatsoever? I remember many times sitting in interviews saying, well, you have this title, but your job is to do whatever needs to get taken care of. And and it was so much less delegation and so much more of abdication of any responsibility, or my not knowing that the ultimate responsibility always fell on me if they didn't do their job, right?
Sure.
And so a really poor job at training, really onboarding someone and having some processes in place. And so what you're saying, it sounds like then, is PTs, maybe healthcare practitioners in general that are independent owners, fail to take the time to lay out those steps and really bring someone on successfully and train them up. Is that about right?
Yeah, exactly. And when, again, the other side, again, when to, they're not doing good, see you later.
Yeah. I mean, we say, again, idea, this person's bad. The solution is to let them go. Well, there might be more steps in between that make that successful.
Completely.
Right. That could help us along the way if we did it right.
For sure.
I gotcha. So you've been across the country with PT clinics, and I'm assuming your role as an HR professional was to do some recruiting. We can never talk enough about how to recruit PTs and get them on board. What were some of your successful actions to recruit PTs and bring them to even some of the rural settings?
Thanks. Sure. Yeah, one of them was always first thing I did when I got to the recruitment part of the HR cycle, right, is I'll get in communication with all schools in my zone. Now, parts of Alaska, there's no PT schools maybe around up there, but I would get in communication with the PTs in the area and what schools are in the area.
Well, even if there aren't any local schools, I mean, those PTs can reach out to their alumni,
alma maters.
Their alma maters, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right, totally. So getting that line is the first thing I'll do, because I want to be well thought of by those schools. I want them to see my name, PT Blah, and go, oh yeah, we had an intern over there, or I've heard that, or he graduated from this school. So I want that PR done really well. And just like as a comment is there's this element of the recruitment side. It really is a marketing PR action.
Yeah.
In bulk, especially the recruitment side of it, right? So the PR value of letting the schools know who you are.
Yeah.
Definitely one of the first things. Then looking at, again, sticking to recruitment only for a second, looking at the current good staff you have, who's been there 5-10 years, 2-3 years even, owners included, right? And
yep.
Even the front desk gal or the marketing individual or whatever it is, who do you know? Who do you know? And I've actually, one of the biggest successes I've had in recruitment, I kind of ran it as a pilot for myself to test myself years ago, was I said, okay, I'm going to put no recruitment ads out. I'm not recommending this. I did a pilot.
Yeah.
I'll put no ads out, and we had about 100 staff total. We had some satellite clinics. It was a big company. I said, I'm going to only promote to my staff. I'm going to send out weekly emails to my staff, a few bucks a head for a referral bonus internally for other staff.
Of course.
And I'm going to bang it out, and I'm going to run it like a campaign. Every week there was a newsletter or a promotion from recruitment HR guy going, who do you know? Who do you know? And I get at least a name a week, if not 5 or 10. And there was, and I had at one point, 87% retention rate, just only dealing with strictly my staff's referrals.
That's awesome.
I mean, I got a guy from the UPS man. His daughter's friend was in school for PT, and we got her in. So like the value of those lines and people never think of those things generally. They don't think of their staff or the mailman or even the schools, but those two routes, they kind of keep the new students coming and you thought well of on this side, and they keep your current active good people that you got in your business thinking. So anyway, those are two of the things I'd say.
I love what you said about recruiting through your current team, because if they're A players, they're more than likely going to hang around with other A players and bring you on. And same thing with the students. If you can get a few of those students from certain classes who are in alignment with your company and they really toot your horn, then they're going to bring on their other awesome PT friends.
Yep.
They're not going to bring on a friend who's no good. More than likely, they're not hanging out with those type of people. Sure. So they're going to recruit for you and tout the benefits of working at your company and bring you on. I know those are huge successful actions. And I know, especially in rural communities, I've had Dr. Sabrina Starling. She lived in rural Wyoming and would help people recruit simply by using your network. Go to Christmas parties. How's business going?
Totally.
Well, business is going great. And during the course of conversation with anybody, and just maximize your network and say, hey, we're looking for someone like you. You're an awesome person. You're productive. You're a rock star. You've achieved many goals. Is there anybody like you that you know that would want to work for me? And so take advantage of your network and leverage it.
No, absolutely. And one thing to add to what you're saying is generally, they'll refer people like themselves to some degree, right? Generally speaking, so they roll with that crowd. But also, they're not going to refer. I think people not refer like you don't want Cindy. You don't want her. She's a pain in the tush. Whatever. So they won't refer people because they don't want to be thought bad of themselves, right?
That's true. That's right. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, it's great to leverage also your local schools and alma mater. I know my business partner leveraged local PT schools down in Phoenix, and to the point where we had PTs who said, at any given time, if you have an opening in your clinics, let us know. We had people, quote unquote, on the bench, and that was our goal. It took about 2 to 3 years to get to that point, but he did an amazing job recruiting to the local schools, such that if any PT were to leave at any time, no fears. We would call up people and say, hey, put in your 4 weeks notice. We're ready to go whenever you are. And we had 2 or 3 people that we could call at any given time to come on. And so it puts you in a different position altogether, minimizes the fear, puts you in a power position for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the big thing is is constantly promoting.
Yeah.
Most owners I've seen they'll, oh no, Blah's leaving, or oh no, we're expanding. We only need one PT, and they'll recruit for one PT, or they'll lose one and go oof, and they'll get one back, and then they'll sit on their laurels and go, okay, we're good, because I have the number of equivalents working for me now.
Yeah.
But it's got to be a constant action. And again, obviously, owners that are single-handing the business are not going to spend 5 of their 8 hours or 10 hours a day.
That's right.
Recruiting, totally. Yeah. But 30 minutes here, but like just any constant flow, any constant thought about it, maybe an ad, hey, an email to your staff, like we just said, that takes minutes, right? An email to the school, hey, how's it going, Director Blah?
Yeah.
Been a while. Like that, it's very little effort, but it keeps the PR, the communications live. It's in there because it's got to be constantly, like you said, if you guys built it up where you had a waiting list, which I've done, that's what you got to do, because then, we used to interview for the heck of it. When we didn't need, we interview 1 a day, 2 a day, just to, we don't need anybody yet, but you know what? We're here. You know what? Big handshake, hug, love what you got here. I'll be back. And then bing. And if they don't come back, I gave them a call and said, who do you know? You're not looking.
That's
who do
right.
you know?
Yeah.
There again. So, yeah.
Yeah. I tell my coaching clients, because we got to a point where we always had the ad out whether we were hiring or not for any position on our team. Totally. We were doing interviews for the positions, the tech positions, the front desk positions that were a little higher turnover. We were doing monthly group interviews for that. And sometimes we were able to pull some gems out of that. Sometimes we didn't, but we always had a monthly interview for that. And then we always had a PT ad out. Never let that drop off, man. Always had it going, always collecting resumes, because you never know. And especially where we were in Arizona, it's just notoriously hard to recruit. But you were in a similar situation in rural Montana. So yeah, great advice. And just a little bit of time each week. Shouldn't take too much. If you can set aside 30 minutes to an hour, send out some emails, send out a text, promote, make a phone call. That's all you need to do.
Absolutely.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we get to that point where then, as we are hiring, what are some of the things you recommend that owners establish as a quote unquote hiring process? We had certain phases that we would take potential candidates through or potential employees through, but what do you recommend?
I think that's completely underplayed, I think, by most is what's next. So, again, we could talk about rural Montana where when I was up there working for a client, a handshake, look dead in the eyes and a good hearty handshake, maybe a pump on the back. That was application. That was your application. Look me in the eye. I like you. You're a stand-up guy or gal. Let's do this together.
We're good to go.
Boss.
Yes.
Boom. But there's something to that, of course, and that should happen, appropriately every time you can. But these days, maybe it's an elbow bump or something, right?
Yeah.
But the process. Just as a comment, I look at recruitment, onboarding, that mush, that part is a bit of where it stops and starts is its own thing, but. It can be a very technical subject, because evaluating an employee, both current inside, but also just coming in, I find that tantamount to, some of, you seeing a patient and seeing what's wrong with them. You're going to evaluate them all over the place, every which way you can, to get to the bottom of what the problem is. I evaluate the heck out of these people coming in. So there is the interview process. I have a testing regimen we always would do. There's resume review, application review, a testing regimen of, there's a bunch out there. I have a couple that I've used a lot. And then interview questions. And then, again, reference calls too, of course. But then after all that, when they're coming in, what is then, if that's what you're talking about, day one, what does day one look like? Employee manual review, policy, But let me know what piece we're talking about. But
let's talk initially about the hiring phase prior to offering the job, or prior to that day one of being on the team. But our steps taken were typically, collect the resumes. We do a phone call, but it wasn't much of an interview. We just wanted to screen for, what was their phone voice like? What was their, we called it tone level. Were they an excited person, or were they like, hey, how you doing?
Sure.
Yeah, who are you again? Yeah, nix those people. If they could simply pass a couple of those things, and like I said, we also did some group interviews, but if we could get to a one-on-one interview, then yeah, we were doing maybe some intelligence test, or we would focus heavily on values and make sure we were talking about our values and what those mean to people, making sure people were attentive when we talked about values and not slung back in their chairs and not caring too
body
much.
language,
assessing that kind of stuff. But then, it was time to also talk about job description and what your productivity expectations would be, and what some of those, what you were required to do. After the one-on-one was then a job shadow, preferably not with the interviewer, but with somebody else.
Agreed.
And then after that, then after everyone kind of agreed and they'd gone through all the processes, then we would offer them the job. So that was ours.
That's great.
What do you recommend on top of some of those things, or differently from some of those things?
Yeah, I think you had it. I definitely, phone screen and a reference check. There's like the normal systematic things you do. You do reference checks. If I got only one of the three, I got at least one, but try to get at least two.
And again, something that was successful for us in regards to reference checks. Sorry to cut you off, but I don't want to move on. But for reference checks, email was always easiest. I don't know what it was. Sure. Like if I tried to get them on the phone, inevitably they didn't have quote unquote time to call me back. But if I could just say, hey, I'm interviewing this person. They put you down as a reference. Could you either give me a call or just email me back your thoughts about them? And that made my reference checks much more successful and more timely.
That's a cool idea. That, I think for time, that's a great idea. What I like the opposite myself. Again, I had time to do this, so I'm not going to talk about it, right? I had to speak to the person on the phone because I wanted to ask them questions. I wanted to hear what they said. I wanted to hear them go, lag.
Those pauses, right?
Okay. Right. Yep. So I am, and what I did to do that was, because if I'm doing a reference check, then the applicant knows there's some interest. I'm even going to that point.
Yeah.
So I would let after the phone call with the candidate, and I like them, I'm probably going to have you come in. Honestly, what I would do is I'd schedule them to come in, and before they would come in, I'd do those reference checks. That's how I would do it.
Oh, you did? Okay, gotcha.
If I like them enough after the testing, okay, I'll see you tomorrow at 2. Meanwhile, here, because I didn't hire them yet.
Okay.
Yeah. And what I could do there, I could leverage the employee, the applicant. I could say, hey, listen, I called your 3 people. I couldn't get through to Cindy, Joanne, or Mark. Oh, no, because they're hot. They're the applicant's like, Cindy, Joanne, and Mark, you cannot, and that's happened too. So I'll get these calls back like this.
Good idea.
Hey, hi, did you, so that's been successful. That was kind of cool. So, but after the reference, after the, the initial little phone thing and then the reference checks, and now they're coming in for the interview. Then, what you asked them in the interview, like you said, you could script that thing out 15 pages. But I think definitely the role and the expectations, the bonus structure, all of that needs to go. I generally do that at the end.
Sure.
I like to start it off, like you said, personal. Tell me about yourself. What do you do? And I love the question along the lines of, what do you do on your time off? Because what I don't want, I don't want someone who's really good at watching television.
Yeah.
They have a whole lot of favorites. No offense, a bunch of favorite podcasts and TV channels, and that's really all they know, or all they do, or that's a lot of what they do. I'm out there hiking, especially for the rural parts. I want to be out there. Good. I want someone who skis in the winter and might, be on the lakes in the summer.
For sure.
So that's a big part of it. So once you get to know them, and it's a fluid, and it's not, or it's garbage, because you'll know that pretty quick.
Yeah.
They're not talking back. They're not asking you. And again, asking me questions. I want someone to interview me in the interview. I want someone to go, well, let me ask you. And they either go, hold on, and they're looking right through
at their phone.
Right? But which is fine. Like, I have questions for you. Or they have the pad okay, that's fine. Very formal, but they're going to be organized.
Yes. Yeah.
And then they interview me. Why are you here? How long have you been here? why did the owner do this? I love those questions. So I look for, like you said, a great personal character and the touch there. They're involved in life outside of my business. Mm-hmm. We looked at PTs in one of my practices I worked for who wanted to own. Like we actually mm-hmm. would, and it might be off-putting to an owner going, I don't want someone that wants to take over or kick me out or open next door.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, I don't fully agree with that because mm-hmm. as long as you're a qualified good applicant and everything that you do qualify them under, mm-hmm. once you get them in, if their purpose is, I really like, down the road, 5-10 years, I really want to have my own place, move back to blah, wherever the heck I'm from.
Yeah.
Why not facilitate that? Why not?
Totally.
I mean, so I think that's a misstep too sometimes. Yeah. It's like, oh no, I want someone that's going to just live here and 2 years at least so I can pay for like, no, think bigger, I think. So
yeah, there were some things over time that I got used to asking. I started steering away from, okay, what are some of your strengths and what are some of your weaknesses? Yeah, sure. And I always hated people. It was surprisingly common. I'd ask them what their weaknesses are and they'd say, I care too much. I'm like, come on,
yes, I know.
Come on, whatever. So I steered away from that and started asking more like, okay, what books have you read recently? I want these people who are intrigued. I mean, if they're honest, they're like, I don't read books. Well, what do you do? How are you growing? Maybe they could be listening to a podcast, to a self-improvement podcast instead of an entertaining one or something like that. But tell me, what are you trying to do to grow? And then secondly, what is your 5-year plan? I mean, even with techs and with front desk and older people who I would interview for positions, I want to know that they've got some goals in place. And I don't know, I'm not so sure. Just it didn't wash, And so I really enjoyed asking some of those more specific, deeper questions. I enjoyed talking about values. I also, a friend of mine who I interviewed a couple times, Sturdy McKee out of San Francisco, he wouldn't hire anybody that hadn't played a team sport in the past.
I dig it.
Yeah. And you can understand why, because you are working so much like a team in a PT clinic, that people who maybe they're doing individual sports might not be used to the team concept so much. And so that was one of their filters. Dead on, they just wouldn't hire anybody if they hadn't played a team sport. And so I love those kind of things that really filter people out, and you find a certain candidate when you start narrowing things down like that.
Oh, for sure. No, I love that idea. And you reminded me that we used them, I think it was Indeed at one point. You can be the passive Indeed goer where you put an ad and that's all you do. Or you can actually pay blah a month, which was reasonable at the time from what I recall, and see resumes.
Yeah.
And what was nice about that is you can search for keywords like NCAA, right? Or soccer, football. It's a word Boolean searching. I think I forget this gentleman's name, but Boolean is a certain way to search, right? A certain criteria.
Okay.
And I worked for an agency for a while too, so I have the recruitment agency side, which is kind of
fun. Oh yeah, cool.
To have seen both universes. They're very different universes. Very funny. But yeah, I mean, to be able to search, we talk about a tool. I can search for, football, Montana, and hiking. Boom, whatever. Yeah. So yeah, love what you said. That's great.
Use those filters. And then, what was your experience in the past? I mean, we've had some really good experiences with on-the-job trainings. I guess they weren't trainings necessarily. They were on-the-job interviews. We'd tell them, we expect you to come in for 2 hours. Sometimes we'd pay, sometimes we didn't. I don't remember if we really had a policy in regards to it, but either way, there was an expectation that they would come for 2 hours and sit with the person in that position and even maybe come in and do some of the work but there was a definite expectation that they would be engaged. You really want to see how they interact with patients, how they interact with other employees, even though they're new to the space. And if it was a front desk or a tech person, 2 gold stars if they brought a notebook and took notes.
Yeah, 100%.
Right?
Totally.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on the job shadow?
I love that. Job shadow. Exactly. That's what we called it, job shadow. Or a working interview, in other words.
Yeah, working interviews. Yes, that's right.
I loved them because, and it wasn't, we didn't use them frequently. I would say it wasn't for every employee equal working interview, but
Okay.
there were some where I was questioning the fit or their background. What do they really know? Like, I'm not a biller, example. So if I had a
Mm.
billing person come in, I'm going to want to a little bit more sit next to Joanne, and let's see you talk to Joanne about your job. I want to see you at the desk with Joanne. Here, look at some claim. Tell me what these HICFAs mean. Like, I want to a little more, like you're saying, a little more live stuff. For certain technical positions, I loved it. Certain receptionists, when we wanted to see what, we had a girl who was there for years, and she was, the boss, reception manager, whatever they call it. We stick girls next to her and let her feel them out for, like you said, half a day, 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
And on the PT side too, I mean, I had one, not condoning this, but I had one employer, one of my first way back, was a chiro, and she had PTs, and she'd hire a massage therapist. She'd ask them to treat her in the interview.
There you go.
Can you go back here? I'm not a clinician. the X, Y, and Z isn't feeling too good. Can you get back there and she judged them on their ability to do it and understand her language and stuff. So I don't know if you can do that these days so much, but it was, but yeah, I love the hands-on idea. I mean, I would always, every PT we hired, we would have them shadow our clinical director or our lead PT. And even if it was and any technical clinical position, I'd have her do a little walk around. Here we go. I do a little intro to the space, but then I'd have her go, okay, this is what we do. And she looked for indicators. I mean, eye contact kind of stuff. And are they involved and are they asking questions? Same stuff. I would tell her what I wanted her to do, and she would kind of do it. Mm-hmm. But that was invaluable. Like a working half day or something.
Yeah, because a lot of these people, they can, for 30 minutes to 60 minutes, they can snow you over. They can talk a good game. They can show some personality. But when you get them maybe with peers and not with the quote unquote boss or the head guy, and maybe they let their guard down a little bit more, and for 2 hours, they kind of start showing their true colors. How often are they, bringing up their phones and checking their text messages?
Absolutely.
And how often are they just off to the side? I had a coaching client who was interviewing a PT, and she had been working in the home health setting for some time. And she said, well, you've been working in the home health setting for so long. How would you help somebody? How would you screen if they came in for low back pain? And she says, oh, I would do this, that, and the other. She's like, okay, yeah, why don't you show me? And she's like, well, I would do this, that, and the other. And she's like, no, I want you to, I'm the patient. Imagine I'm the patient and tell me what you want me to do. And she couldn't do it. And so imagine if she had just gone off of the interview, the face-to-face talking portion, and not asked her for some specifics and hired her on. Oh yeah.
Forget it.
You
would have heard about it.
Yeah, definitely. And so, awesome. So those kind of screens are important. People who, again, they would talk a good game, maybe they were able to go through that portion, but then they would do a job shadow with a PT in the clinic, and you wouldn't see any engagement between the candidate and the PT and the patient. They weren't asking questions. They were simply standing there against the wall, watching what they were doing. And I'm like, okay, you don't have any soft skills. So I understand you can technically do what you need to do, but you don't know how to talk to people. And that would simply write them off. Otherwise, we were ready to bring that person on. We were that desperate, but I'm thankful we didn't.
No, that's a great point. And one of the clinics I worked for not too long ago, they had a home health piece and then the clinic in the brick and mortar in clinic piece services. And what was nice is you'd interview some PTs, and you didn't really want them in the clinic. Somebody in the clinic, you want a clinic PT to be a certain individual. You want high communication. You want the camaraderie there. You want ability to handle busyness. I mean, what are you seeing? 18, 20 plus a day.
They got to be productive.
Boom.
Yeah.
In the home, exactly. In the home, they're seeing 2, 4, 6, 8, I don't know, a day maybe. So different games. But so, I mean, looking at, they were even different hires there. I mean, I liked him, but he's not really a go-getter. Not really going to change stick him in the home. And that made sense for that guy, because maybe he can, on his own terms, fine, let him take his time with 6 patients. enjoy. But he's not going to work in my clinic and mess me up in there. So one thing just to add to what you said too.
Sure.
I used a couple times when I really wasn't sure about the person's honesty level. Right. You talked about tone or whatever. Right. I wasn't sure about their real intentions. I would tell my clinical director or the manager. I would tell them, I would give them questions. I would give them things to say in front of them. Right. Kind of like you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like almost like an investigator, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So So they would go, I'd say, I'd have her say, bring up, have them talk about their last job or their last employer. Because again, like you said, the face I get for 60 minutes is the face I get for 60 minutes. Handshakes, big smiles, hugs, right? Yeah. But when they're in front of this peer, not their boss, right? They can have a different conversation. So I'll have them, it's their scenario, but I definitely will use that too. I'll talk to even once or twice a patient who I knew was in the clinic. Hey, listen, there's a new PT coming in today for their shadow.
Yeah.
Give them a hard time. Within legal restraints. Give them a hard time.
Sure.
So, and then see, do they roll with it? It's good or not. So, I'll play that side too.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Well, I can't overstate the importance of those job shadows because, like I said, there are plenty of times where people pass through the interview phases with flying colors, got to the job shadow, and we're like, okay, red flags, done.
Yep.
And so it's important to have those. So the next step, what I want to talk about, I want to talk about all these things, but I think it's an important step because we don't know how to onboard people. Can I just say that? I mean, I don't know. I wonder if business schools teach that at all, but how do you onboard somebody day one? You would think that it takes so much hand holding and so much time and effort. How can we successfully onboard? And I know there's a difference between PTs and PTAs and the rest of the team. What are your recommendations to establish an onboarding process for those two different groups?
I like to start, behind that you need general policy stuff. I'm not talking about state by state, if you have to legally have a handbook or not. I know that depends, but
so doing some prior footwork, right?
Yeah. I mean, you need to have something to provide. Because I think most good applicants that wind up being hires want a regimen of some kind. They want to know that someone's going to be on them, not micromanaging maybe, but going to be on them. They want, when all the people I've hired over the years, they really want someone that's going to be watching out for them, right? At both sides, they want to be disciplined when they need to be, but these are the good people that you hire. So I think if you have a regimen of here's the checklist we're going to do here, and I'm very open with my communication and direct, right? So we're going to do this checklist of steps here. Always included, by the way, in my onboarding day one is some kind of orientation. Now, you can look at that from the viewpoint of this is where the front desk is and go meet your boss. And that's what a lot of people will do. Shake a hand, I'm your boss, come to me with problems, see you later. But I, again, having the formality there, the regimen, I like to have almost like a scavenger hunt is what I create. Because I want them to come in for any position. And again, it's a PT, a trained professional is a little more sideways by that, where an administrative person's like, okay, whatever, I'll go count the computers. 1, 2, 3, 4. But I literally will have them go find out where you're going to work. Go see where your cubicle is. Go meet your boss. Go shake the owner's hand. Count the number of chairs at the lunch table. Find out if we have a microwave. Like it sounds completely goofy maybe, but what that does, it orients the person in the environment.
In the space.
I'm here. Yeah, exactly. I'll have them go out the front door and come back. Go out the front door. Do we have a sign up? You don't actually. What does it say? Oh, it's the old business. Oh, whatever. I mean, so, and I'll have a dialogue there with them about, and by the way, it works as an investigation for me because then we have no computers. I forgot that, or we don't, the sign's older. That's kind of cool. So, but I'll do that because it gets them out of their comfort zone. Again, it throws them a little bit off, gets them comfortable. I have them meet 5 people at least that first day.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm doing this weird checklist thing that HR guy said to, let me shake your hands. Cool, they just met Betty. Whatever. Okay, fine. Go meet one biller, one receptionist, whatever. So that's a big part of it because it gets them a little more comfy. People know who the heck they are to some degree, and then I'll give them a buddy, just so you know. I'll say, okay, so receptionist blah is your buddy. Questions about where the lunchroom is, ask her. So I'll let Betty, listen, you're her buddy, shake hands, and I'll leave them alone. It buys me some time to do the next steps. So they're off for about 30 minutes plus digging around the office.
Yeah.
People are seeing them interact and they're doing whatever. And I'm getting the packet ready. I'm getting the onboarding process. So there's your checklist with definitely have to review the purpose of the company.
Sure.
So the owner wants everyone to know this. Because like you said before, even going to the interview stage, if they don't align, if your purpose and theirs don't align, they should not be there. And let me say one thing that I had an owner, it's just past this part, but I had an owner that would meet with every PT, maybe is every 2 weeks, every month, and just go over their purpose. So how's it going in life? What are you? The owner would meet directly, 30 minutes to an hour, and go over their what do you want to achieve in their 5-10 year plan? Basically.
Yeah.
And how does it align with us? And does it align with us? And so that was kind of cool. So I think the formality of a checklist, I like that little orientation thing.
An employee handbook, review some of the simple policies, the dress code, the piercings and tattoo code, or policy, and voting policy. If you want to take days off, this is the form that you use. We used an HR professional. It was kind of a one-time shot to develop that employee handbook for us, and they are out there. I don't know how I found her, but she sat down with me, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 times, and we'd go back and forth on email, and she'd give me the standardized stuff that was required by our state, the policies that we had to provide and federally had to provide. But otherwise she said, okay, what is your time off policy? And okay, let's put that in there. And what do you want? And so she would guide me through the creation of that employee handbook. And so there are independent people out there that can do that for you.
100%. And I think even companies like Paychex and Paycom, these guys, they also have an element that they can do that too. And let me just say, I fully agree that needs to be there, whether your state legally needs to have it there or not. You need that because you don't know how many times an employee who leaves under unfortunately bad circumstances. I want my last paycheck. I want my bonuses. I want my unused paid time off. Okay, you signed this. It said we don't do that, or whatever it is, and depending on the case. So how many times it saves your butt just having these basic, like you said, these basic 15, 20, 30 policies about functionality in the clinic written down. And one thing I would say is an owner needs to spend the time to know them. That's the thing too. Having an HR company do it, okay, fine. But it can't just be in your email and you went, oh, did I? Oh yeah, right. So many times. And not for bad reasons, but you have to know them because if you don't know those, then you're going to be the effect of what you don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Policy. So
well, and then it's easy. And I know the APTA can help. There are, I think Rick Owenda was promoting some policy and procedure manuals that can help you with compliance. That's a different thing, separate from the employee handbook, but you got to make sure, okay, that's on your checklist, right? What's your HIPAA policy? Are they going to do some video trainings? And there's a lot of video trainings on HIPAA that qualify. And if maybe your state requires some OSHA training and Medicare fraud, waste, and abuse. And so making sure you check these boxes, not waiting for the next team meeting that's maybe scheduled in the next 8 months to do those compliance things, doing them at the very front end. The more you can automate that, that's why I like some YouTube videos that can support you in that regard, or MedBridge has some of those compliance videos. Just sit them down here, watch this video for the next 30 minutes. If you have any questions or concerns, let me know. Scan over our written policy, so we can sign you off on the compliance portion of that onboarding. And I think a lot of people miss that, especially as small clinicians. We don't even think about it.
No, well, yeah, right. For time for it. And I think you hit something too that I promote when we have a robust onboarding. I'll put that in an ad. And I'll just tell you the truth, because we didn't talk much about the recruitment, the ad side of things, which we can do separately or whatever. But like when you're advertising for a PT and all that stuff, when I put robust onboarding process or rigorous, or take your choice of words like that, they get the idea that, they don't mess around. And then you're this much more maybe apt to get an employee that, they have a robust, whatever.
Someone
that
that's
means to
really
them,
professional or
yeah,
looking
exactly.
for an organized structure.
Exactly.
I mean, that makes I guess that makes the difference really between a mom and pop shop and an enterprise. And I think that's where a lot of PT owners want to get to.
Sure.
Mom and pop shop, they are at the front of the store, they're greeting every customer, they're taking every order. And that's what a lot of individual clinic owners are when it's just them and maybe one other PT. But if they want to truly get some freedom, they want to move over to an enterprise, and an enterprise has the structure of a hiring process and an onboarding process to ensure the success of those people that come on board and that they're fully quote unquote trained. And I know you can take that to many levels. Our onboarding process was towards the end there was off-site. They would have almost like a full day of onboarding training at a different place. But I know even in Blaine Steinmach's case in Montana, I recently interviewed him. I think his onboarding process was spread out over the course of 6 months or even a year. They'd have a few days and they'd meet up again 30 days later and again 60 days later and 90 days later, and then meet up again at the 6-month mark and the 12, and kind of review some of those principles as they needed to and hold them accountable. So, I mean, you really can go crazy with it, but at least having some structure for that onboarding can really establish a foundation for the team.
100%. And I know Blaine's basic structure, and I like, there's a lot to be said about. I mean, you can call it ongoing training, you can call it whatever you want to call it, but there is this onboarding element, right? Week 1 is a whole different game plan than month 6. But I think you should absolutely. I think there needs to be a 60, 90 day, whatever it is, whatever your terms are in your employment manual. Review how they're doing.
Sure.
It's 3 months, 6 months. It has to be there for sure, because again, that's part of that thing at the beginning I mentioned, where you need to know what this person's doing in your clinic. How's it been going? And if spend the time to build out the policies, build out the regimen, build out the basic. Spend the time now, so it's done. Because once it's done, it's done. I mean, once you have the manual, it's done.
Yeah, once you get that signature, all you have to say is, hey, if they have a question regarding the paid time off policy, go check the handbook. You don't have to ask me anymore. You know where the handbook is. Go look for it.
Sure. There's your checklist. Where are you going to checklist? Okay, step 3. Good. Do step 4.
Yeah, and that helps the trainer, because that trainer doesn't, I mean, initially it's probably the owner, but in the future, hopefully it's not. But if you have an organized checklist, that's something that you can hand over to someone else. Totally. And that's where you really start gaining some freedom, is when someone else, not the boss, starts espousing the purpose and the values. And this is what we do. And when that goes peer to peer, that means a lot more than from the boss talking down. It helps out a lot. And it also ingrains in the trainer those same values and expectations, and helps them along the course of it. If something is really written out, if there's a quote unquote curriculum to it,
Completely. And I love that you said, I mean, you jogged my memory that even in a small clinic where you have an owner and a couple staff, letting a peer, having one person, it could be I had a receptionist do it, I've had the lead PT do it, but having somebody else responsible for that basic administration. Because really all it is make sure that this new employee does this, this, and this, and report back to me that they've done this.
Yeah.
And it's off your plate as an owner a little bit. So maybe you give them a little money on the side appropriately for doing that. Maybe they have a little bonus or whatever. But you have to give up some of those hats, because
Well, you get overwhelmed.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, there's so much to that. If people, I'm going to cut off our discussion here, because I want to transition into how to get people out the other end of the business. And that is getting rid of dead weight, disciplinary procedures, developing that HR, not just from the beginning, like we talked about today, but through the course of the life cycle of an employee, which might be going out the door in good or bad circumstances. Yep. So let's cut off here. But before we move on to that, if people wanted to get in touch with you, James, how would they do that? Are you willing to share?
Yeah, of course. Do I give my phone number out, you think? Or
whatever you're comfortable with. Hey, Some people have.
Of course. 917-312-4294 is my phone number. You're welcome. Listen, I love helping people. I work for the company I work for now because I'm helping multiple owners in multiple states at the same time. I couldn't do that 3 years ago, so I love that, man.
Exactly.
And then my full name, James Savas, which you'll have, I guess, here, right? My full name, James Savas, at hotmail.com.
Okay. Awesome. So if people have some questions, they can reach out to you, James Savas at hotmail.com. That makes it easy. It's not James period Savas. It's James Savas.
Yeah, double S in the middle. Just kind of.
Okay. 2 S's in the middle. Cool. So for those people who are listening in real time, you'll hear the second part of our conversation here next week. But if you're not, just move on to the next part and we'll start talking more about the life cycle of an employee.
Thanks.